Following the Lakers signing Marcus Smart, and not to mention Luka Doncic recruiting him to their team, so big shout out to Luka Doncic here too, they have some fun new lineup combinations to play with. Obviously talking more about defensive lineup combinations, adding a former Defensive Player of the Year award winner here with Marcus Smart, him winning that award back in the 2021-22 NBA season. Obviously still a very good and effective defender when healthy and on the court, which unfortunately has been a big if for him lately. But talking more about that, talking more about their closing lineups, which is the most important lineup combination. I mean, I know we tend to make a big deal about the starting lineup. Everyone's talking about if he maybe will enter their starting lineup, if he should enter their starting lineup. But for me personally, I care a whole lot more about the closing lineup. So talking more about that, talking a little bit about their starting lineup, where Marcus Smart will or maybe should fall into that combination, and simply about their new look, maybe dangerous rotation going forward with Marcus Smart. Now I'm not sure it's their complete lineup or complete rotation. I for one would really like them to add a 3-and-D wing to their team yet. You know, not to get too greedy here, but that's kind of their final need left if you ask me. Adding a true big 3-and-D wing. You know, Marcus Smart's definitely a good 3-and-D backcourt player, or at least can be a 3-and-D player. More so the defense part and at times the 3-point shooting part. But ideally adding that 3-and-D wing to really balance out and perfect their lineup combinations. Those simply talking about what they have right now and at this current moment, if they enter the season with it, and if this is their day one rotation, then they still have some pretty fun lineup combinations in my opinion. But before we get too far into it, I genuinely would appreciate it if you took a brief moment to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. And big shout out to you guys that already do that without me having to ask. I genuinely do appreciate it. But without further ado, getting back to our topic here, and simply starting briefly with a starting lineup and if their starting lineup should change going forward. Now with the addition of Marcus Smart, I've seen many takes about him entering it and either replacing Austin Reeves, maybe Rui Hachimura, maybe getting really different and replacing both of them in the starting lineup, though I don't think they will and probably shouldn't go that far with it. Now don't get me wrong, you can make an argument for Smart to enter the starting lineup, whether you're talking about replacing Austin or maybe Rui Hachimura here. I get it, but I probably wouldn't go that route. Again, wouldn't be entirely opposed to it, though with a new player joining their team and a guy that's been on and off the court pretty often lately, I'm not sure I'd go that far with it. I'd probably keep the same starting lineup, or if I would change it, I'd go with the guy that's been a part of their starting lineup and a part of their team for nearly 3 years now at this point, that being Jarred Vanderbilt. I know we want to add more defense, and I definitely agree with that, but if you're adding Marcus Smart, that's not a guy that can defend 1 through 4 on the court. Definitely a great point of attack and guard defender on the court, no argument about that, but if we're trying to balance out the rotation, if we're trying to give them a primary defensive option that pretty much can take on any matchup on the court, then Vanderbilt might not be a terrible idea. And yes, between him and Marcus Smart, Smart's the better offensive player, is the better 3-point shooter, but between the two of them, you're not getting a great, reliable 3-point shooting option, so it's not a gigantic difference either way. Yes, obviously more offense with Smart, but arguably more defense and simply more versatility with Jarred Vanderbilt on defense, giving them some rebounding help on the court also, can't forget to factor that in, then the energy and effort on the court, obviously a big benefit to that too. However, I really don't care that much about this starting lineup. If you ask me, the overall rotation, the closing lineup, and how they filter it throughout the entirety of the game is the much bigger priority here. So yes, make your arguments about the starting lineup, but I for one care more about the closing lineup, their death lineup quote unquote if you want to call it that, their different combinations they use against more offensive minded teams, defensive minded teams, bigger teams, smaller teams, so on and so forth. That's what I care more about here. And talking about a true defensive death lineup quote unquote, this could be a really fun combination now with the addition of Marcus Smart, maybe adding him with a guy like Jarred Vanderbilt. You know, that would be a more matchup dependent thing and kind of how they're playing in that individual game. If they're playing well offensively, if they're knocking down their 3-point shots, and obviously if everyone's healthy for that fact, then we might be able to do that combination. And if we're talking about that combination because I've seen many people referring to it, yes, you could go with something like Luka Doncic, LeBron James, even though yes, you can argue against that not being their best defensive combination, those two are going to be in there no matter what. Then with those two, obviously both Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt, if we're talking about defense, those are their best two defenders at the perimeter in my opinion, so gotta add them in there too. Then for their final fifth player in the lineup, if you're talking about a bigger lineup and a more traditional lineup, then put DeAndre Ayton in there. Also a pretty good defender when actually committed and healthy on the court, so that's not a bad option. Or if you want to go more of the small ball lineup and kind of more versatile option lineup, then maybe a guy like Rui Hachimura. I mean, at that point, wouldn't have to take on a tough defensive matchup, so wouldn't be a terrible option. Maybe a Jake LaRavia. Obviously it's getting to a smaller lineup at that point, but could be another option. But for the, I guess, basic one and simply adding both Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt, that would kind of be their best defensive lineup that would actually be a go-to option for them. The 5-man combination of Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, and DeAndre Ayton, which would definitely be a fun lineup combination to watch play out and definitely would be very defensive minded at the point of attack. I mean, if they're looking to bother and really pester opposing guards out there, then this would be the lineup combination to go with. Between the two of Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt last season, they combined to average roughly 4.5 steals per 36 minutes. That's pretty impressive between two singular players alone here. Then for deflections per 36, combining for 9.4 of them per 36 minutes. So yeah, between the on-ball pickpocketing, between the on-ball pestering and simply being an annoyance out there, being two defensive menaces and causing a lot of chaos on the court, that would definitely be the best defensive-minded combination to go with. Definitely their best point of attack defense combination. Might be a little bit inconsistent offensively, between the two of Vanderbilt and Smart not being very reliable offensively, not being great 3-point shooting options, but then again you still got Luka, LeBron, and Ayton for that, so I think they probably could get around it. Not sure if this would be a true closing lineup combination. I doubt we'll see it very often, but throughout the rotation and throughout games and maybe against teams like the OKC Thunder for example, definitely having to take on both two good guards like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, that might be an option for that kind of matchup. So again, whether or not it's a defensive combination that they use at the end of the game, whether it's simply throughout the game or maybe 5 minutes in a matchup here and there, it would be a pretty fun combination and definitely a defensive-minded combination for them. Though if we're talking about maybe a more go-to closing lineup for their team, I'm not sure we'll see both Jared Vanderbilt and Marcus Smart in there together. You could maybe point to one of them, and I think that one more often than not will be Marcus Smart here. And probably if we're talking about a closing lineup, then Austin Reaves will factor into the equation. Maybe looking something like Luka Doncic, Austin Reaves, Marcus Smart, LeBron James, then either DeAndre Ayton, or again if they're going in the more small ball direction, which they tend to finish the game with in that kind of combination, then it might be Rui Hachimura here. Obviously will be matchup dependent, but obviously still have some pretty good offense and defense here between Luka Doncic, LeBron, Austin Reaves, Marcus Smart for the toughest point of attack matchup on the court, even can match up with some smaller to medium-sized wings, so isn't a terrible defensive option lineup. LeBron can definitely lock in when he wants to yet and during the end of games. Luka is not a terrible defender when he actually locks in. Austin can be decent when he locks in, so not a terrible lineup defensively, and definitely one of, if not their best offensive lineup combination too. I mean, talking about ball handling ability, playmaking, scoring ability, 3-point shooting even, they have plenty of it out there with this 5-man combination, which is mainly referring to the Rui Hachimura combination here. Obviously having the playmaking ability with Luka, LeBron, and Austin, even Marcus Smart for that fact, 3-point shooting between Luka, LeBron, Austin. If Rui Hachimura's in there, another great 3-point shooter for their team. He led their team in 3-point percentage last season, so definitely could be. And I think we will see that lineup combination with them going forward, or at least given that they don't trade Rui Hachimura, which I don't find very likely, at least not to begin the season. Maybe at the trade deadline if they don't come to a new contract with him, but that's a topic for a different day. Regardless though, I think we probably will see this lineup combination. I wouldn't doubt if it becomes their go-to closing lineup combination. Again, if they don't trade Hachimura, if they don't make a different trade, I think this could be a really good option for them and probably one they're already kind of thinking about too. Now if there would be a minor change to it, and if they're trying to pick between Marcus Smart or Austin Reaves here, trying to get DeAndre Ayton in there with them, maybe also keep Hachimura on the court, then it might be a game-to-game thing between Smart or Austin here, depending on which of them is playing better on the court, which of them is actually hitting their shots and defending better on the court with that. Though in my opinion it's definitely going to be more of those two on the court, with Luka and LeBron kind of either picking between Rui Hachimura, DeAndre Ayton, or maybe the hot hand off the bench. And kind of apart from all that, and not even talking about a closing lineup here or starting lineup, simply a rotation lineup for them, as I do think Smart will come off the bench, at least right away anyways. I mean, maybe eventually plays their way into their starting lineup, depending on if they make more trades or if they adjust the rotation or overall team further, then maybe. But talking about the rotation or lineup that he might enter the game with, after a guy like LeBron comes off the court, I think Smart will enter the game for him. Usually LeBron comes out before Luka Doncic comes out. Luka plays nearly the entirety of the first quarter, so he'll probably come in when LeBron goes out. Maybe that's simply the rotation after that point. Luka, Marcus Smart, Austin Reeves, and then DeAndre Ayton and Rui Hachimura if that remains their starting lineup, or maybe they alter it a little bit. Also bring in a guy like Jake LaRavia with Marcus Smart. At that point looking something like Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart, then Jake LaRavia with DeAndre Ayton. That could be a different lineup combination for them, giving them some good point of attack defense, an upside defender with Jake LaRavia who can kind of take on tougher defensive matchups, here and there can, and I guess depending on the matchup we're talking about, but would be a fun combination of 3-point shooting ability, offensive creation, still plenty of ball handling ability and playmaking ability, and overall a pretty good combination with no LeBron on the court, maybe with Hachimura off the court as well. Even could switch Austin Reeves and Hachimura here, making a pretty big lineup with plenty of offensive and defensive capability. Regardless though, you can kind of make any lineup combination you want here. I think the ones that we're going to see the most are probably the Marcus Smart lineup in the closing lineup, the one I referred to with Smart, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, LeBron, and then either DeAndre Ayton or Rui Hachimura. I personally think that'll be a go-to for them. That's a pretty versatile lineup combination, whether you're talking about either DeAndre Ayton or Rui Hachimura, maybe depending on the size of the team they're playing against and the defensive kind of scheme they're going with, that can maybe decide that ultimately. But again, regardless, I think they have plenty of options here with Marcus Smart, whether you're talking about the closing lineup, bench combinations, the rotation throughout the game, maybe eventually the starting lineup depending on if they alter their team further. But regardless, I love the addition of Marcus Smart. It adds a lot to their rotation in regard to defense, adding more versatility to their defense, even another ball handler and playmaker to their rotation, a guy that's had plenty of playoff background and a guy that can make some big time shots. So Marcus Smart added a ton to the rotation, and it will benefit their lineup combinations going forward. Absolutely no doubt about that. So with all of that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the addition of Marcus Smart and what it will do for their lineup combinations going forward? Will he be a mainstay in their closing lineup? Maybe make some quote-unquote death lineups with him in there? Could he eventually enter their starting lineup? And what would you look to do with him with their lineup combinations? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night.